All right, welcome back. We still have a little bit more time on our hands to continue to break down Charlotte FC's first playoff match in their first hopeful series of this MLS playoff run that they are beginning. Dean Smith spoke at Bank of America Stadium. We don't typically get to hear him there. We're normally over at their practice facilities, but it was a nice change of scenery, getting the boys back onto the pitch in the rain on this beautiful Monday morning. Dean Smith taking the time to answer a lot of those questions that we in the media had going into this first match against NYCFC.
Hello, Dean.
Hello, how are you?
What can you tell us about availability for tomorrow, minus obvious with Wilf and Pep?
Recording in progress.
Yeah, just Wilf and Pep. Got 22 outfielders training with us at the moment, so everybody else in a good place.
I know the conventional wisdom might just be to slot Liel in for Wilf, but how tempted are you, maybe having played New York so recently, maybe to give them a change up or change the system or do something more unconventional?
Yeah, no, we've obviously got placements that can come in and do a job. Liel is the obvious one. Tiger Smalls has really impressed in training over the last few weeks, and Brandon Cambridge as well. So we've got a number of players who can play on the side, and we'll give the opposition problems. Obviously, Liel's not played as many minutes as we probably would have liked over the last month or two, but he's done well in training so far, so that's the likelier one.
You haven't, if he is the one that starts, you would have 9 of 11 that have playoff experience in the starting 11, and you obviously also have that experience of last year. How important is that?
I think it's very important, and I think the players are probably, like the staff as well, are still smarting over last season as well. We felt a little bit wronged, a last-minute penalty that goes to VAR and doesn't get overturned, and then lose on penalties. So, it was a tough one to take last season, and I've seen the drive in the players to try and put that right. So, we have to go and try and put that right now to tomorrow.
I know you're not necessarily an external motivations or bulletin board material guy, but a lot of the outside noise has questions about your chances, particularly without Wilf. How much of that do you maybe put in front of the players, or at least maybe try to use as fuel for them tomorrow?
No fuel. I just say there's one team that's won 11 out of the last 13.
Dean, what? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
What would starting off this series off with the win just mean for the city in general, do you think?
I think it's a big thing. It's the first time we've obviously hosted in our short history. So if we could go and get that win, it gives you a big kickstart to go on and complete getting through to the next round, and that's what we're all aiming to do. So I think it would give everybody a lift. I think I'm right, we've sold something like 34,000 tickets already. So there's going to be a noise there. There's going to be, we're getting supported by our supporters, and it means a lot to everybody in this city. So hopefully we can go and do that.
And Dean, I know that you are someone who values every voice in your program, not just the players and your coaching staff. The field got turned over in 24 hours for training today and will be made into a completely new venue in essentially 48 hours, and in a way even less. What does that say about the support staff of Charlotte FC and the Panthers?
It shows that everybody's together in this. There's a togetherness about ourselves, and the Panthers had a tough game yesterday. I was at that, but they're having a good season and they'll bounce back. But to turn around the pitch as quick as they could to help us just shows that everybody's together here.
Diani last year with that last-minute penalty, that was doubtful, and so I know you guys mentioned earlier this season how he was apologetic about that. Do you feel like maybe there's an extra fire in him heading into this playoff?
I don't think so much for that. I think hopefully he's put that beyond him, and I think his performances have showed that he's put that beyond him. he's one whose contract's coming up with an option, and he'll be looking at his future and how he can stay at this club, because we enjoy having him. He enjoys having it. He enjoys being here as well. It took him a while to get some steady starts and some rhythm into his game, but now he's back to the player that we believed he could be, and we're helping him to continue progressing as a player.
What do you make of New York after these first 2 games this year?
I think the first game when we played at home, it was a pretty even game. We scored a couple of really good goals. They give us a couple of problems with Martinez's deep runs. I think we had Bill at right back that game, Jaquil at left back. So we were going through that period where we were chopping and changing a little bit with our fullbacks. And then we went to their place and actually dominated more of the ball. But they caused us problems with transitions at times. And just looking at some of their stats, I think nearly 60% of their chances since we've played them have been on transitions as well. So our rest defence has got to be good.
How important would you say the collective is, tomorrow, given that you're missing 2 key players that, can make moments of magic like Zaha and Pepe?
Yeah, I mean, we've missed players of that calibre before. Pep got, in my opinion, wrongly sent off last year in the playoffs at Orlando and missed the home game. Wilf unfortunately got a second yellow card for a red mist moment. I've complained a little bit to PRO because I don't think he should have got the first yellow card, and they probably agree as well. I think Harry Toffolo should have got a yellow rather than Wilf, but there's nothing you can do about it. It's a little bit silly that you can appeal against the first yellow if it's mistaken identity or deceivement, but not if it's a wrong yellow card. So we're going to miss him, that's for sure. But the people who are coming in have got a point to prove, and I like people when they've got a point to prove.
Is there a difference in approach, I guess, knowing that, if it goes to 3 games, you have a third match at home this year rather than away?
Yeah, we wouldn't like to go to the third game because we'd like to obviously try and win it in 2. But if we go to the third game, then we know we've got our supporters here, and it'll be another big game for the city of Charlotte, and one we'd look forward to. But we want to try and get the win first on Tuesday and not concentrate on anything else.
So we're going to hear from Dean Smith following Charlotte FC's first playoff match, which is going to be Tuesday night, 6:30. A lot of anticipation. We're going to, of course, continue our coverage tonight on our special, as we're going to be welcoming Eric Krakauer to join us and continue to take a look ahead at this playoff push. We always have a lot of fun visitors who come through the WCNC doors. Sir Minty has to be up there as one of the best.
Sir Minty
Chad,
was
right?
there. That was very fun. He visited Charlotte FC. And today we actually got to speak with Eric Krakauer. He's a club ambassador for Charlotte FC, and he broke down some of the unsung heroes behind Charlotte's success this season. Let's listen in. I'm with Eric Krakauer now with Charlotte FC. And Eric, what makes this matchup against New York City FC and the first round of these playoffs so important?
Well, I think that since the inaugural season, Charlotte has been looking to host a playoff game at home. They finished in the top 4 for the first time ever. Every season has been an improvement on the last. And this year they got it done where they get to host, if necessary, 2 games in this best of 3 series. Hopefully that won't be the case. They get the job done at the bank, and then they get the job done after that at Yankee Stadium against New York City.
Right, absolutely. And we know New York City, a tough place to play, so hopefully going in with that first game advantage. Let's talk about our home field advantage. The bank, people say, one of the most difficult places to play in the league. What kind of atmosphere are we expecting for the game?
It's always an electric atmosphere. We've known that since the very first season. Fans are really committed to this team. Whether it's the casual fan who just started rooting for soccer since the team established itself in 2022, or fans who have been here for years who were clamoring for an MLS club to take root. So it's always a very hostile environment for anybody who comes in here to play against the Crown. It's just fantastic. Look, I've had the opportunity to travel all around the country calling games in all these different stadiums in Major League Soccer, and Charlotte's atmosphere is truly one of the top 2 to 3.
And I think as someone who's also been around the country and traveled and seen a lot of MLS clubs, a lot of MLS stadiums, I'd have to agree on that one. Let's take it down to the pitch, all right? No Wilfred Zaha, a massive absence for the club, obviously suspended on decision day. But it's not the end of the world. Kerwin Vargas has been a resurgence. He's been fantastic. Leo Labata has an opportunity to step up. Who do you think will kind of fill that gap during the game?
It's probably going to be Liel Labata. He is one of our DPs, and he's had, he hasn't had the most consistent of seasons, but he certainly is a difference maker, and this is an opportunity for him to step up. As you said, Kerwin Vargas has been outstanding. I don't think a lot of people anticipated that he would be a consistent starter for Charlotte this year, but he's proved that he's one of the best players on the team, and the consistency of his performances have made him an almost undroppable player. So I think Abada is one of the guys who's going to step up. But without Wilfred Zaha, and we also need to mention the fact that Pep Biela is out for the season. There were hopes that he would be back from his injury in time for the playoffs. That's not going to be the case. Right there, you've got, 40 goal contributions between the two of them. So this is going to be a situation where everybody is going to have to step up in order for us to get a result against a very tricky team. Although, I should note, Charlotte, best record, home record at home in Major League Soccer. And in the 4 previous matches against New York City at home, they've beaten them 4 times, outscoring them 7-2. So historically, we are their bogey team. Long may it continue.
And I certainly hope that history continues. I want to talk about an unsung hero because we've done a few of these interviews, and you'll see them throughout this special, about impact players. And we talk about Kerwin Vargas, Wilfred Zaha, Pep Biel, who's obviously no longer healthy. I want to talk about Brandt Bronico, the man filling in at that 10, a hometown hero. I think he needs a little more love. And, he's a friend of the show. He's been fantastic for us. Tell me a little more about what makes him so special, and during that amazing unbeaten run, why he was such a vital part of those wins.
Well, with Brandt Bronico, man, he's got the tangibles and the intangibles. He really has been a very impressive player since the first season because he has been the guy that nobody expected to really gain a spot and keep it consistently. But I mentioned that Vargas is undroppable. Brandt Bronico is undroppable because of his work rate. He does it on both sides of the ball. And I remember when Dean joined the club last year, he was asked about Brandt, and one of the things he said was he's never coached a player who runs as much. And in the modern game, legs are everything. Skill, of course, very important, but how much you run, particularly in MLS, which is a very transitional league, sometimes determines the result of the game. And he's just one of those guys who is indefatigable. He works from the first minute till the last, chips in with some goals and some assists. We saw that in that winning run that he scored and assisted. I forget exactly in how many games. But he's just a tremendous presence in the midfield and an even better guy. And look, he's a locker room guy. He's a community pillar. So I'm delighted for him, and I hope that he continues to play his best soccer with Charlotte FC.
And I think it's a true testament to the club. This same team a few years ago, if they lose a player like Biel, they don't have a player like Zaha, you worry. And that's one of the problems with a lot of MLS clubs. There's not a lot of depth just based on the salary structure and everything. Charlotte FC doesn't have that problem. I feel like there is real discernible depth across the team. To make a playoff run, how important is that depth?
Very important. But I would say that it's not even... when you look at players like Wilfred Zaha and Pep Biel, there's an understanding that these guys are incredible players who give the team a little bit of extra quality, or a lot of extra quality that sometimes takes us over the edge. But when it comes to Charlotte FC, I think that it's the sum of its parts, right? Or the saying that they're greater than the sum of their parts. Everybody on this team is important. And yes, it was a consistent lineup. I've used that word many times already with you today because it's been an integral word when it comes to what they've been able to do. I mean, matching an MLS record for wins, 9 straight, which came to an end, by the way, at Yankee Stadium against New York City FC, a noon kickoff. Don't ask me why that happened. Because it changes all the rituals. But everybody has played a part in this team. And again, I'll go back to Dean Smith because he's been integral to the success that we've seen over the last 2 years. He has made it very clear that every single one of these players contributes to the success of the team. And team is the primary focus. And the players understand that. So no matter who you plug in to play, they're going to give you the kind of performance that is necessary in order to succeed. And I expect to see that going on in the playoffs as well.
Absolutely. And if you look at the last few MLS Cup winners, you will notice a similar trend as well. So it's nice to see Charlotte FC kind of replicating that success thus far. Hopefully that continues. I want to talk to you about Charlotte FC in the playoffs. Last year, I'm going to go as far as to say absolute heartbreaker.
Yes.
I mean, that's how I felt. I think that's how a lot of fans felt. This year, if we were optimistic last year, we are downright through the roof this year. And I think that's very exciting. Talk about why it's so important to have this home and potentially home, hopefully it doesn't go that far, but you never know, advantage, and what is different about this year's playoff team than last year's?
Well, you learn from your mistakes, right? And so, let me revisit the playoffs last year. Soundly beaten 2-0 against Orlando in the first game. Responded in an incredible way in game 2. We deserve to have won that game by 2 or 3 goals, I would say. It was 0-0. Pedro Galese, the goalkeeper for Orlando, was outstanding, goes to penalties. Christian Kalina, the reigning goalkeeper of the year, saves 2, 1 is missed. Outstanding performance. Go to game 3 in Orlando, better than Orlando. And then a very dubious, and I would argue incorrect, penalty decision in the 92nd or 95th minute is made. Penalties made by Torres, but he ends up scoring on the rebound. We go to penalties once again, and they end up winning. So that playoff series left a very bad taste, and understandably so, for everybody involved, not just the fans, but the players, the coaching staff, everybody in the front office. And we have complained about that call within ourselves, to ourselves, about that game. This is an opportunity to make up for that playoff series, and you get the bonus of playing, if necessary, 2 games at home. Mm-hmm. And like I said before, or I think I've said before, because I've done a bunch of shows, but we've got the best home record in MLS. Mm-hmm. And that has a lot to do with the fans, 100%. So they're going to need to be in full voice and in their best form as well. So having that advantage going into the playoffs gives you a lot of momentum. And then potentially, in the next round, you could, I don't want to look too far ahead, but you could face the Shield winners, Philadelphia, who we've already beaten here. And we're defeated by them in Philadelphia, but it was a very close game. So I just think that there's a real opportunity for Charlotte to make it very far in the playoffs. But you know this well. MLS is all about parity and singular moments. We saw it the other night with Chicago almost beating Philadelphia. It went down to penalties, and they couldn't get it done in the first game. That really felt like a playoff match. And I think that game actually sets the standards for what we're going to see in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Every game is going to be won by very, very narrow margins, slimmest of margins. So Charlotte have to be at their best against New York City FC. Our fans have to be at their best. And it's going to be amazing. So hopefully we'll be able to fill up the stadium with 34,000, 35,000. I believe we're very close to that already. Tickets are limited. But make sure you're there because it's going to be an amazing spectacle.
And you heard it here, folks. Make sure you're there. The Bank of America Stadium will be an absolute world-class environment for Charlotte's first playoff match this Tuesday. Eric Krakauer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
Should be
for
an
having
amazing
me.
game. Looking forward to seeing you. Should be a really, really, really special moment in the Queen City. Thank you.
And like I mentioned, Jeb has had the privilege of each and every week talking to one of the commentators who is going to be on the call for Charlotte FC's match heading into the weekend. And this week, no different from any other, Steve Cangelosi joining him to break down what he can expect to see from the booth.
I am joined by a legend in the MLS game. You've probably heard him on some of the most famous calls throughout the league. Steve Cangelosi, thank you so much for joining us. We are so happy to have you back.
It's great doing this series. I'm excited about it, and I think the fans should be as well. The preseason goal was a top 4 finish for Charlotte. They checked that box. Now let's see in the coming weeks if they could check a few more.
Exactly. I mean, I think if you would have, we wanted 4th place at the beginning of the year. That was kind of, all right, what does the team have? We've made it happen. Now where do we go from here? Steve, you've watched a lot of Charlotte FC. You've given us some of the best analysis we've seen all season. Putting it bluntly, what does Charlotte need to do to win?
Stay composed. I don't think they can sustain a number of games without Wilfried Zaha on the field. I'll start right there. But be true to their identity. And I think they go into this with the knowledge that they do have, I feel anyway, one of the most fortified defensive elements of the game in Malanda, in the goalkeeper Christian Kalina, who I think is playing his best soccer at the most proper time. And I think they have enough in big moments, whether that's on transition or build-up play, to score enough to beat good teams in this tournament. Look, it won't be easy. I think they're a 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, and you know something? That's probably realistically where most people would put them in the pecking order of teams out of the East that could get to an MLS Cup final. I think good defense, clutch moments can rule the day for them. This first game without Zaha on the field is going to be an interesting study, though. I'll admit that.
I think you and all of the fans throughout the MLS were saying the same thing on that. We are both all eagerly waiting to see what that looks like. The man likely to fill in for him, Liel Abada, was a star in Scotland, came with high expectations, and I think it's okay, about 2 years in, a little less, to say he has fallen a little short of those expectations. But a big opportunity in this first playoff game in lieu of Wilfried Zaha. What do you want to see from Abada? What have you seen that's positive? What do you think he needs to improve on? How can he be the designated player Charlotte FC needs for this match?
Well, I think the role that he plays in is the first thing that has to be addressed because he's not the same player as Wilfried Zaha. Zaha, I think, is at his best, and the addition of Harry Toffolo was created with Zaha in mind because Toffolo would be that player to rise up from the left flank. Zaha would cut inside very effectively and do things that, let's face it, Wilfried Zaha can do, but not everybody else can. I'm interested to see how Dean Smith employs him in this one game. He's going to play in every game of the series, Liel Abada, or at least I feel he will, unless Charlotte is really just trying to nail down a result that they have in hand comfortably. But with that said, I think you've got a player that could excel in the middle of the field. I think you've got a player that could be potentially just a one-for-one switch on that left side for Charlotte. And what I think the answer to this is not necessarily what Abada's going to give you, but what players like Kerwin Vargas will give you on the right side, because his game has been elevated now. I don't read too much into this guy was labeled a designated player, and because his numbers are very modest, that means he's fallen short of expectations, or that means that it's been a disappointing signing. MLS is filled with those. Every team has an allotment, if they choose to have it, of 3 designated players. I think you can find a number of teams, including the one they face on Monday night, that would look at those DP spots and say, we haven't utilized them to the best of our ability. Thiago Martins is a designated player for New York City. Is he an elite center back in this league? I would say no. Another of their DPs, Tyler Magno, not ready for this, was loaned out to grow his game elsewhere. So I'm looking at Abada playing a good 60 minutes for this team, and if it's something where he can impact 1 or 2 scoring chances, I think that might be enough for Charlotte FC to find a way to get a result in this first game.
And I like your take. It is a good point. Whether they are designated players or not, it doesn't necessarily mean they're impact players. And historically, though a short history, Charlotte FC has been able to get a lot out of players they've developed who are not necessarily designated players. I'm looking at Patrick Ajimong, Adelson Malanda, Christian Kalina. So that is a good point. It is, however, awesome that designated player Wilfred Zaha has lived up to the billing and has put himself in a fantastic position, and we're excited to get him back for the second leg of this tie. Let's talk about the defense. You mentioned it earlier. While for a lot of teams, it may not be the quote-unquote sexiest topic, I think for Charlotte FC, that's really been the draw for 2 years now. Whether or not this team wins, it lives and dies by its defense. And when you have Adelson Malanda, Tim Ream, Andrew Privet, Harry Toffolo, and then Christian Kalina in net, it is an elite defense by any stretch of the imagination throughout the MLS. But it's going against a great offense, and that is an offense that is firing on all cylinders at the right time in New York City FC. What matchups are you looking for throughout that match, and how does Charlotte FC make sure that Christian Kalina's net stays clean, or at the very least has fewer goals than the one on the other, than Matt Freese's?
I'm fascinated by who wants the ball in this game. So let me start there as I attempt to answer that question, because these teams have played twice this season. Each team winning on its home ground. But the interesting thing about those two results is that the team that dominated possession in those two matchups lost. And I think both coaches recognize that. So I can see both coaches going into this series, and in particular New York City on the road, at least for that initial game, adopting a philosophy of, we don't care if Charlotte has the ball. The onus is on them before their home crowd to do something to justify the home field advantage in the first place. So I think we're looking at transition game for each being so important to how these teams succeed or fail in this series. New York City has, in my opinion anyway, one of the best transition players in the league in Alonso Martinez, the Costa Rican who scored 17 goals. If you let him go off to the races, especially on the side maybe of a 38-year-old Tim Ream, I think that you're asking for a bit of trouble. But I think Dean Smith is also a smart enough coach to think in advance of ways to try to snuff that out. There are only a couple of teams in MLS I trust more defensive big moments than I would Charlotte. Now, one of those teams is Philadelphia, and that could be a potential, and let me stress potential, conference semifinal opponent for Charlotte if each team wins its respective series. And to take this back to Zaha a little bit, that has to be a learning moment for him. It must be, because the situations he found himself in that game where he was sent off against the Philadelphia Union, he'll find himself in again if they face the Union one more time, because that's the way the Union play. It's generally an ugly, foul-filled game. But to go back to your point, I think right now they feel as good about their fullbacks as any team in MLS right now. Byrne on the right side is where he should be. He was excellent during the 9-game winning streak. In the back four and with the goalkeeper, let's face it, they're in a very good place.
That's fantastic. And to kind of build off that, you mentioned Alonso Martinez, who has been absolutely lethal this year, the Costa Rica international, who I will say, as a, unbiased, very fun to watch. I mean, he is just awesome. That guy has a motor on his motor on his motor. What other offensive, what other players from New York City FC should Charlotte fans be looking out for to be dangerous on the pitch?
Nico Fernandez-Mercado was a mid-season addition, and New York City did very, very well in bolstering its starting 11, as a matter of fact, in mid-season. Fernandez-Mercado is one of those players who comes in. He'll probably play on the right side primarily of their attack because Alonso Martinez will be their natural number 9, but Fernandez-Mercado can slip into that 9 position as well or play in a dual striker role if they're looking for a goal late in the match. One of the great things about their head coach, Pascal Janssen, is they had something of a mini crisis in the midfield. He didn't let that deter them. And as a matter of fact, I think they finished the season stronger than they appeared to be earlier in the year. They had a bit of a crisis in that Keaton Parks, one of their mainstays for several years, had to have blood clot surgery again on his leg. He will miss this series and the balance of the season. They've turned to the likes of Andres Perea, who's bounced around for a couple of teams right now, but is finding a groove with this New York City side. They'll give quality minutes to a teenage kid named Jonathan Shore, and Justin Hack, who's a natural center back, is one of the versatile guys who can also play in the midfield. Simply put, they have found a way with the deck stacked against them, I believe anyway, to play some of their best soccer. But Jeb, it's such an unpredictable league. Here they are going into the playoffs. They won a great New York derby several weeks ago. Fact of the matter is they didn't build on that. They lost their last 2 games, including decision day against a Seattle team that had nothing to play for in the table.
And you talk about unpredictability. I think I speak for most MLS fans when I say that's what makes MLS playoffs one of the best playoffs in the United States. It's what makes the end of the season one of the most fun soccer leagues across the world. It should be a fantastic playoffs. I'll just really quickly, we're looking at Charlotte, but let's take a 5,000 foot in the air view. You've watched these teams. You are probably the most knowledgeable MLS voice that we're going to talk to, certainly on here on this show. Who are the teams that you're looking at in this playoffs? You have the Miamis, you have the LAFCs, the favorites. Who are the teams you're looking at in the matchups that you think are going to be so excited for those Charlotte fans who are going to be watching around the grounds, as they say?
The prism here is Miami primarily, isn't it? I think a lot of people will look at them as the gold standard. And I hate saying that because that's not fair to the Philadelphia Union. Mm-hmm. Philadelphia had the best season. They have every right to claim the Supporters' Shield and have home field advantage for as far as they last in these playoffs. But look, if there are basketball fans down in Charlotte, and I suspect there are more than a few, you might remember the famous documentary, The Last Dance. Yep. Well, in a way, it's that way for the Miami core 4. This is the last time they'll be together for any real competition. I'm talking about the 4 Barcelona guys, and if you want to add the addition of Rodrigo de Paul, you could make it 5. But this is the last chance that Messi, Busquets, Jordi Alba, and Luis Suarez will have a chance to win a trophy together. They're not going to be easy to knock off, considering what's at stake. And I think we've seen a ruthless Messi in the last couple of games in the lead up to this playoff. I'm fascinated by what happens in LAFC for the balance of this year. This is the last dance. I'll use it again for Steve Cherundolo as a head coach who's done very, very well in this league. And he has the best duo, if you will, of Denny Bouanga and Son Heung-min who've come into this league. Those are teams right now I think that most would say are the sexiest options, but maybe even the best options in this playoff. I'm going to stay chalk with my initial response here. I say Miami is the team to beat because I've said this before on other shows. They're a team, despite all of their defensive weaknesses, that can still outscore its problems. Maybe there's somebody out there that'll prove me wrong in the coming weeks.
Well, we certainly hope that somebody is wearing teal. To your point, it'd be very hard to bet against a Lionel Messi playing in the form of his life, and that's pretty much the form you always see because while form may be temporary, class is permanent. Steve Cangelosi, thank you so much for joining us. We seriously appreciate your time. A great friend of the show. Your analysis is some of the best in the game of any game. Thank you so much.
I can't wait to get down to Charlotte. I'll be there Monday and a big one on Tuesday night to set the tone for the postseason. Thanks for having me.
Have a good one. Can't wait to hear you on the call.
All right, thank you to him and all of the guests. We had a lot of really cool coverage coming into this week, and it's just showing the hype is real around Charlotte FC, around MLS, and around soccer in the city of Charlotte right now. Again, proven to be a playoff team once again as they are beginning their run Tuesday night, 6:30, when they are going to be welcoming NYCFC in a best-of-3 series. Jeb, this has been so fun to break this down with you, to talk to all these people about what we can expect, getting some different insights from the analysts to the players to manager Dean Smith himself. So I think we have a pretty good perspective heading into this one, and I think there's a lot of reason for all of those people we mentioned, as well as the supporters, to be pretty optimistic.
Absolutely. All that's left now is to watch the games unfold. Thank you, Danielle.
Absolutely. And we're going to have live coverage Tuesday night starting around like 5:30 and then at 6:20.
Yeah, we're going crazy.
WCNC. Yeah, we're going to be there. Hopefully staying dry. Everyone out there stay dry, but enjoy the match, and should be a fun one. Thanks so much for watching.